My name is Sarah Johnson, and at 47 years old, I live in Nashville, United States. What I'm about to share with you changed my life forever. My experience of 40 days that revealed the stark realities of both heaven and hell. This testimony isn't just a story. It's a truth that I believe can transform your life as it did mine. The gentle breeze rustled through the maple trees outside my window as I settled into my usual evening routine. The digital clock on my nightstand read 9:47 p.m., its soft blue glow barely illuminating my modest bedroom. The wooden floor creaked beneath my knees as I assumed my familiar prayer position. The worn carpet beneath me bore the subtle impressions of countless nights spent in the same spot, a testament to years of seeking God's presence. Since childhood, I had always sought to grow in faith. My grandmother, a woman deeply devoted to God, taught me the power of prayer and the importance of trusting in Christ, even in the most difficult times. Her weathered hands would clasp in prayer, her silver hair catching the morning light as she taught me about faith. "Sarah," she would say, her voice carrying the weight of wisdom, "prayer isn't just about speaking to God. It's about listening with your whole heart." For years, I dedicated myself to following those teachings, but something always felt missing, as if God had a bigger purpose for me. Despite my position as a respected member of my church community, I felt like an actor in a play, going through the motions without truly understanding my role. This inner struggle had weighed on me since I was young, creating a barrier between me and the fullness of God's presence. That Tuesday night started like any other, but looking back, there were subtle signs that something extraordinary was about to unfold. The air felt different somehow, charged with an energy I couldn't explain. The usual sounds of the neighborhood, distant traffic, dogs barking, children playing, seemed to fade away one by one until I was enveloped in an unusual silence. "Lord," I whispered, my voice barely audible in the stillness of the room, "I know you're there, but sometimes it feels like there's this wall between us. I've been faithful. I've followed your teachings, but something's missing. Please show me what it is." As I knelt there, pouring out my heart to God, the atmosphere in the room began to shift. The change was so gradual at first that I barely noticed it, like the slow dimming of sunlight at dusk. The air grew thick with a presence I had never experienced before, and my skin tingled with awareness of something, or someone, beyond the physical realm. My heart began to race, not from fear, but from a deep knowing that I was about to encounter something beyond my understanding. The lavender scent of my candle was replaced by what I can only describe as the fragrance of heaven itself, a sweet, pure aroma unlike anything on earth. Then I heard it, a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It wasn't audible in the conventional sense. Rather, it resonated within my very being. "Sarah," it called, with such authority and love that tears immediately sprang to my eyes. "Prepare yourself, for I will show you what few have seen. The world needs to hear what you will witness." In that moment, I experienced something that defies scientific explanation. It felt as though my spirit was gently separated from my physical body. I remained aware of my earthly surroundings, but they became distant, like a fading echo. When I opened my spiritual eyes, I found myself in the presence of Jesus Christ himself. No artist's rendering, no matter how masterful, could capture the majesty of his appearance. He stood before me, surrounded by light that somehow managed to be both blindingly brilliant and soothingly gentle. His eyes held the depth of eternity, yet they focused on me with such personal attention that I felt completely known and understood. His face radiated a love so pure and unconditional that it brought fresh tears to my eyes. Every doubt I had ever harbored, every mistake I had ever made, every moment of weakness, he knew them all, yet his love remained unchanged. In his presence, I felt simultaneously smaller than a grain of sand and more valued than all the treasures of the earth. Lord, I managed to whisper, my voice trembling with emotion. Why me? I'm nobody special. I've spent years feeling inadequate in my faith. Jesus smiled, and in that smile, I saw the answer to every prayer I had ever prayed. Because you are willing to listen and obey, he said, his voice carrying the same authority I had heard moments before. Your years of seeking, even in doubt, have prepared you for this moment. What you are about to see is not to frighten you, but so that you can understand the seriousness of what is at stake. Heaven and hell are real, Sarah, and my mission for you is to tell the world what I will reveal to you. As he spoke these words, I felt my spirit being drawn upward. The darkness of my bedroom was replaced by an increasing brightness, and I found myself entering a realm that defied all earthly description. This was heaven, not as I had imagined it, but as it truly was. The first thing that struck me was the light. Unlike earthly light that comes from a single source, this light seemed to emanate from everything and everyone. It was alive, almost tangible, and instead of hurting my eyes, it nourished my spirit. Colors I had never seen before danced through the atmosphere, creating patterns that spoke of divine creativity. The air itself was different. Each breath felt like inhaling pure life, filling me with a vitality that made me realize how dim and muted earthly existence truly was. Music unlike anything I had ever heard filled the air, not just sound, but pure worship expressed in harmonies that no earthly instrument could produce. The melodies seemed to come from everywhere, from the light itself, from the beings around us, from what appeared to be trees and flowers, though they were unlike any vegetation on earth. As Jesus led me through this magnificent realm, I saw structures that defied architectural possibilities. Buildings made of what appeared to be living light rose in impossible configurations, their surfaces reflecting and refracting the glory of God in ways that created ever-changing patterns of beauty. Rivers flowed with water so pure and clear that they seemed to be liquid crystal, alive with divine energy. The banks were lined with trees bearing fruits I had never seen, their leaves shimmering with metallic hues that shifted in the living light. This, Jesus said, gesturing to the splendor around us, is what I have prepared for those who love me. Here, there is no pain, no suffering, no tears. Every soul that enters this place is enveloped by the eternal love of the Father. As we walked, I saw countless beings. Some appeared to be angels. Others were clearly glorified human souls. Each one radiated joy and peace, their faces reflecting the pure love that permeated this realm. They moved with purpose and grace, engaged in activities I couldn't fully comprehend, but understood were part of eternal worship and service. What struck me most was the complete absence of time as we know it. In heaven, every moment was perfect and complete in itself, yet part of an eternal flow of joy and purpose. There was no anxiety about the future, no regret about the past, only the perfect, eternal now in the presence of God. Jesus turned to me, his expression growing more serious. But Sarah, there are many who will never reach this place. Not because I don't love them or because they're not welcome, but because they choose to live apart from me. They reject my love and the sacrifice I made for them. His words filled me with profound sadness. Standing in the midst of such perfect love and joy, I couldn't fathom why anyone would choose to reject it. Yet I knew he spoke the truth. I had seen enough of human nature during my years on earth to understand how pride, doubt, and the illusion of self-sufficiency could blind people to their desperate need for God. Before I could fully process these thoughts, I felt the atmosphere beginning to change. The glorious light of heaven began to fade, and Jesus took my hand firmly in his. "Now," he said, his voice filled with both authority and compassion, "you must see the other reality. You must understand what awaits those who reject my love." As we prepared to leave the heavenly realm, I tried to burn every detail into my memory: the colors, the music, the perfect peace. I knew that what I was about to witness would be drastically different, and I would need these memories of heaven to sustain me through what was to come. The transition was jarring. The living light of heaven dimmed rapidly, replaced by an oppressive darkness that seemed to have physical weight. The air, which had been so life-giving moments before, became thick and sulfurous, making each breath a struggle. The temperature rose dramatically, and I could feel an overwhelming sense of despair pressing in from all sides. The descent into darkness was unlike anything I could have imagined. As we moved further from the heavenly realm, the oppressive weight of darkness grew heavier, and an overwhelming sense of isolation began to creep into my soul. The warmth of Jesus' presence beside me was the only comfort in this desolate place. The first sounds that reached my ears were distant at first, faint cries that grew steadily louder and more distinct. These weren't ordinary cries of pain or sadness. They were sounds of pure anguish, of souls experiencing a torment beyond human comprehension. Each wail carried with it a story of regret, a testament to choices that led to eternal separation from God. The ground beneath my feet became hot and unstable, like walking on burning coals. The air grew thicker with each step, filled with an acrid smoke that seemed to carry the weight of countless lost hopes and dreams. The darkness wasn't just the absence of light. It was a living thing, pressing against us from all sides, trying to suffocate any remnant of hope or peace. Jesus spoke, his voice cutting through the oppressive atmosphere. "This place exists not because I desire it, but because of the choices humans make. Each soul here had opportunities to accept my love, but they chose differently." As we ventured deeper, I began to see figures in the darkness. They weren't the glorified beings I had witnessed in heaven. These were shadows of what they once were, twisted by their eternal separation from God's presence. Their faces bore expressions of such complete despair that it made my spirit ache. We approached one of these souls, a woman who had once been beautiful, but now appeared hollow and consumed by regret. "I had everything," she cried out, her voice echoing through the darkness. "I had wealth, success, admiration, but I worshiped these things instead of God. I made money my idol, success my religion. Now I understand that none of it matters, none of it lasts. This emptiness, this separation, this is forever." Another soul, a man who appeared to be in constant agony, shouted into the void, "I mocked God. I laughed at those who believed. I thought I was so clever, so enlightened. I said there would be time to consider faith later, but later never came. Now I know the truth, but it's too late. It's too late." Jesus guided me to another area where a woman knelt, tears streaming down her face. "I spent my life creating my own version of spirituality," she lamented. "I prayed to statues, trusted in crystals, followed every New Age teaching that promised enlightenment. The truth about Jesus was right there, but I rejected it. I thought all paths led to God. Now I know there is only one way, and I chose to ignore it." The pain in their voices was unbearable, but Jesus insisted I hear their stories. "These testimonies," he explained, "are why I'm showing you this place." Each of these souls had free will, just as all humans do. They weren't condemned here. They chose this separation through their repeated rejection of my love and truth. We passed by countless souls, each with their own story of regret. Some had been religious leaders who taught false doctrines, leading others astray. Others had been ordinary people who simply postponed their decision to follow God until it was too late. Some had actively rejected Christ, while others had simply ignored him, living their lives as if eternity didn't exist. The atmosphere grew even heavier as we went deeper. The heat became more intense, and the cries more desperate. I saw souls reaching out, trying to grasp at anything that might offer relief, but finding only emptiness. The separation from God's presence was complete and final. There was no hope of change, no possibility of escape. "Sarah," Jesus said, his voice full of sorrow, "this is why your mission is so crucial. These souls can no longer change their fate, but there are millions still on earth who can. They need to understand that their choices today determine their eternal destiny." I watched as a group of souls huddled together, seeking comfort, but finding none. They had been friends on earth, encouraging each other in their rejection of God's truth. Now they shared eternal regret. Their former friendship turned to mutual accusation and blame. "We thought we had time," one of them cried out. "We thought we could live as we pleased and deal with God later. We encouraged each other in our rebellion, laughed at warnings about judgment. If only we had listened. If only we had believed." Jesus turned to me, his eyes filled with both love and determination. "This is why I came to earth, why I died on the cross. I desire to save every one of these souls, to spare them from this fate. But salvation must be accepted. It cannot be forced. My sacrifice provides the way out, but each person must choose to accept it." The reality of what I was witnessing overwhelmed me. The contrast between the glory of heaven and the utter desolation of hell was stark and horrifying. In heaven, every moment was filled with joy and purpose. Here, every moment was endless torment and regret. We passed by another soul, a man who had once been a wealthy businessman. "I thought I was too intelligent for faith," he said, his voice thick with regret. "I built my empire, earned my millions, but I lost my soul. What good is all that success now? What I wouldn't give for just one more chance, one more opportunity to choose differently." Jesus spoke again, his words carrying the weight of divine truth. The choice between heaven and hell is not made at the moment of death. It is made in the thousands of decisions during life. Each time a person rejects truth, hardens their heart, or postpones their decision to follow me, they step closer to this place. As we continued through this realm of darkness, I saw souls from every walk of life, every culture, every social status. Their earthly distinctions meant nothing here. Wealth, fame, power, intelligence, all had crumbled to dust in the face of eternity. The only thing that mattered was the choice they had made about Jesus Christ. The air grew even thicker, filled with the acrid smoke of torment. The cries of the lost souls seemed to merge into one continuous wail of despair. Yet Jesus insisted I hear more testimonies, more warnings for those still living. I was so afraid of what others would think. One soul cried out, "I knew the truth, felt God calling me, but I cared more about fitting in with my friends. I chose their approval over God's love. Now they're living their lives, and I'm here forever." Another soul, who had been a religious leader, wept bitterly as he spoke. "I led my congregation astray. I preached what people wanted to hear instead of God's truth. I modified the gospel to make it more palatable, more modern. I told them sin wasn't real, that God's judgment was just an outdated concept. Now I bear the responsibility not only for my own soul, but for all those I deceived." The weight of these testimonies pressed heavily upon my spirit. Each story was unique, yet they all shared the same tragic ending: eternal separation from God. Jesus guided me through what seemed like endless corridors of darkness, each filled with souls experiencing the consequences of their choices. "Look carefully," Jesus said, pointing to a group of souls huddled in apparent conversation. "These are those who knew the truth, but waited too long to act upon it." As we drew closer, I could hear their anguished discussion. "I always meant to get right with God," one said, his voice thick with regret. "I knew what I needed to do, but I thought I had time. I was young, healthy. I thought death was far away. Then the accident happened, and suddenly it was too late." Another soul joined in. "I kept saying tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll pray. Tomorrow I'll go to church. Tomorrow I'll ask for forgiveness." But tomorrow never came. Now I understand that today was the only time I ever really had. The atmosphere grew even more oppressive as we ventured deeper. The heat was now almost unbearable, and the darkness seemed to pulse with malevolent energy. Jesus held my hand tighter, his presence the only thing keeping me from being overwhelmed by the horror of what I was witnessing. "Sarah," he said, his voice cutting through the cacophony of wails and laments, "what you're seeing is the reality that many refuse to believe exists. They choose to think of hell as a myth, a metaphor, or at most a temporary punishment. But this separation is eternal, just as the joy of heaven is eternal." We approached another soul, a woman who had once been a prominent spiritual teacher. "I created my own truth," she cried out. "I taught others that they could find God within themselves, that there were many paths to salvation. I rejected the exclusivity of Christ's claims. Now I know He was the only way, and I led countless others down the path to destruction." The testimonies continued, each one more heart-wrenching than the last. A young man who had been a popular influencer spoke through his tears. "I had millions of followers. I used my platform to mock faith, to promote a lifestyle of self-indulgence. I influenced so many young people to reject God, to embrace sin. If only I could go back and use that influence for truth instead of lies." Jesus turned to me, his expression grave yet compassionate. Each of these souls represents countless others still living who are making the same choices, following the same paths. This is why you must share what you've seen. The time for decision is now, not tomorrow, not someday, now. We passed through what seemed like an endless procession of lost souls, each bearing witness to the consequences of rejecting God's love and truth. Some had been atheists who proudly denied God's existence. Others had been nominal believers who never fully committed their lives to Christ. And still others had created their own versions of spirituality that excluded the necessity of Jesus' sacrifice. "Remember," Jesus said, "these souls are not here because I didn't love them or because my grace wasn't sufficient. They are here because they chose to reject my love, my truth, and my sacrifice." Free will, the ability to choose, is both humanity's greatest gift and greatest responsibility. As our journey through this realm of darkness continued, I noticed something that made the horror even more profound. The souls here retained their memories of life on earth. They remembered every opportunity they had rejected, every warning they had ignored, every moment they had chosen to turn away from God's love. A man who had been a scientist spoke up. "I demanded physical proof of God's existence. I said I would only believe what I could prove in a laboratory. I ignored the evidence of design and creation, the testimony of changed lives, the inner witness of my own conscience. I chose to believe that life had no purpose beyond the physical realm. Now I know the truth, but it's too late to change my choice." The darkness seemed to grow even more oppressive, the air thicker with the smoke of torment. Yet Jesus insisted I see more, understand more, so that I could effectively warn others. We approached a group of souls who had once been close friends on earth. We encouraged each other in sin. One of them cried out. We called evil good and good evil. We mocked those who tried to warn us, called them judgmental and intolerant. We thought we were so enlightened, so progressive. Now we share this eternal darkness, and our friendship has become a source of even torment, as we blame each other for our mutual destruction. Jesus spoke again, his words filled with both authority and sorrow. The choices made in life echo through eternity. Every soul here had opportunities to choose differently, but they consistently chose to reject truth, to reject love, to reject me. Now that choice has become permanent. As we prepare to leave this place of eternal separation, Jesus turned to me one final time. Sarah, you have seen both heaven and hell. You have witnessed the eternal consequences of the choices humans make during their brief time on earth. Now you must share this truth. Tell them that heaven and hell are not myths or metaphors. They are real destinations, and every soul is heading toward one or the other. The transition back to the heavenly realm was as dramatic as our initial descent had been. The oppressive darkness gave way to glorious light, the suffocating heat replaced by refreshing peace, the wails of the damned transformed into the beautiful harmonies of heavenly worship. Yindi,